The Spanish Congress has voted against the Catalan separatists' amnesty bill that would have benefited those who took part in the 2017 failed illegal secession bid.
Israeli forces have stormed a hospital dressed as staff in the occupied West Bank, executing 3 Hamas militants. Northern Ireland's Unionist Party has agreed to restore the region's government after a near 2-year boycott.
Could the AI Act increase the use of facial recognition technology in mass surveillance, despite EU efforts to regulate it?
A controversial amnesty law that would have benefited Catalan separatists has been blocked by the Spanish Congress. The bill was rejected by one of the 2 Catalan parties, the Junts or Together, who wanted to ensure that their leader, Carles Puigdemont, could return home from Belgium, where he's a fugitive. They argued that the proposed law did not give him enough protection. The Conservative People's Party and the far-right Vox also voted against it, meaning the bill received 171 votes, 5 short of the majority it needed. The bill must now go back to a parliamentary commission to be drawn up again within 2 weeks. Socialist Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez had agreed to push through the law in exchange for parliamentary support from 2 small Catalan separatist parties. This enabled him to form a new minority leftist government late last year.
Undercover Israeli troops have raided a hospital in the West Bank, shooting dead 3 Hamas militants inside the building. A security video shared on social media appeared to show up to a dozen armed soldiers disguised as women and male medical staff entering the Ibn Sina hospital in Jenin. They were seen running the corridors, seemingly searching for the men. Israeli Defense Force officials said the men were local Hamas leaders and that they used the hospital to hold meetings and plan attacks. Acknowledges the men were members, but says there was no exchange of fire and that they were killed unlawfully. Fighting has increasingly spread to the West Bank from Gaza. Palestinian Authority officials estimate that around 370 Palestinians have been killed and more than 6,000 have been detained by Israeli forces in the West Bank since the start of the Gaza war. In a late-night breakthrough, Northern Ireland's main pro-British Unionist Party has agreed to end its 2-year boycott of a power-sharing government with pro-Irish Republican Sinn Féin. DUP leader Jeffrey Donaldson has managed to convince his party leadership to accept a British government deal on post-Brexit trading arrangements. They had been concerned that while Northern Ireland would have access to the EU's single market, the proposal would undermine the province's position within the UK. The boycott had threatened the future of the landmark Good Friday Agreement peace accord, which ended decades of sectarian violence.
Several motorways in France were still blocked due to farmers' protests on Tuesday. Protesters are disappointed with government under-delivering and have threatened to block Paris, which would restrict the capital's main supply market. In Spain, 3 main agricultural unions announced they would also be joining the protests. French blockades are already causing damage to Spanish and Portuguese hauliers who are unable to cross the country and complete their journeys. Farmers in Belgium also staged protests on Tuesday. Dozens of tractors blocked an Antwerp ring road, creating traffic jams. The blockade was lifted at 10 a.m, but traffic restrictions remained in place. Belgian farmers are criticising the European Union's environmental policies, cheap food imports and rising costs.
A years-long diplomatic conflict between Ukraine and Hungary took a step forward on Monday during a meeting between the country's foreign ministers. Yet, no decision has been made on Hungary's blocking of a crucial EU financial aid package for Kyiv. The meeting came as European leaders are scrambling to persuade Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán to lift his veto of 50 billion euros in aid to Ukraine that he blocked in December.
Talán nem túlzás és nem veszik tiszteletlenségnek a kollégák, ha az elvárás szót használom ebben a kontextusban, amely arra vonatkozik, hogy a 2015-ben már létezett jogaikat a magyar nemzeti közösség tagjai kapják vissza.
On January 23rd, a rocket damaged the house in which the family of Olympic figure skater Dimitri Sharpar, who died near Bakhmut, lives. This happened a year after the family received the news of Dimitri's death. Dimitri was a rising star. In 2016, he entered the top 10 at the Youth Olympic Games and has won several medals in Ukraine.
The use of facial recognition could increase despite European efforts to regulate it. Last December, the EU closed an initial agreement on artificial intelligence that would limit its uses to very specific contexts and under judicial authorization. Specific contexts could include a terrorist attack or searches for missing people. But for some, the loopholes are still there.
They've brought in some really broad conditions within which police can use these systems. And so what we fear is that this will have a legitimizing effect. These systems that so far we've been able to contest and say, we don't want these in a democratic society. It will become harder to push back. And we might see other countries around the world saying, well, the EU has rubber-stamped these technologies.
While the European Parliament wanted a ban, countries like France have pushed for a series of exceptions that would allow a more extensive use of facial recognition technology. France even announced the use of AI to control suspicious activity during the Olympic Games. Digital rights organisations have said the new European legislation does not rule out massive surveillance.
What we can expect is potentially an increase in the use of facial recognition systems in our public spaces, especially when these systems are used live. So the idea that as you are walking around a public space, going to the shops, going to school, to the doctors, to a demonstration, that there might actually be increased powers for law enforcement agencies to be using this live facial recognition technology to track you across time and place wherever you're going.
But some MEPs say the proposed law strikes a good balance between security and civil rights.
I think is a very good way that we can balance the integrity but also safety. And if we would have banned this technique, then two things would happen. First, the societies, why should the integrity of a terrorist is more important than the security of our citizens? And secondly, this technique would continue to be developed by other countries, and especially by China.
This Friday, the EU countries will vote on the final version of the law. Some of them are still undecided. If it falls, the EU will have to restart the negotiation of the AI Act.
Hospitals across Germany have been hit by doctors demanding better pay and conditions. The Marburger Bund trade union called for some 20,000 physicians at university hospitals to take part in what was billed as a warning strike. The move comes after a third round of negotiations with federal states failed. Its members are asking for a 12.5% pay rise and higher bonuses for working nights, weekends and public holidays.
A Pakistani court on Tuesday sentenced former Prime Minister Imran Khan and a member of parliament from his party to 10 years in prison each after finding them guilty of revealing official secrets. Both can still appeal the decision. Khan, ousted in April 2022 with a vote of no confidence by the parliament, is serving a 3-year prison sentence for another corruption case. The court's decision was announced days before the country's parliamentary elections scheduled for February 8. Khan was already barred from running due to the previous conviction. Former cricket star turned politician says the court cases against him are a conspiracy to keep him out of the elections. Pakistan has seen violent demonstrations since his arrest. Authorities have cracked down on his party and supporters.
Members of a rock band that has been critical of Moscow's war in Ukraine remains locked up Tuesday in a Thai immigration prison. On Sunday, the group explained that its members were detained for bureaucratic formalities relating to a concert in Phuket, which was solved after a fine was paid. Due to the band openly criticizing the Russian invasion of Ukraine, If they are sent to Russia, they risk imprisonment. Russia's ambassador to Thailand said Russian diplomats were not responsible for the group's detention. Twin sisters who were stolen and sold at birth to different families have been reunited 19 years later. The girls found each other thanks to a TV talent show and a TikTok video. Neither Amy nor Anno knew they were adopted until they found out they were identical twins. The case of Amy and Anno brings to light the thousands of children who were illegally taken from their birth parents in maternity wards and sold to different families from the 1950s until 2005 in Georgia.
Seville's official Holy Week poster is causing controversy. The poster is supposed to depict the resurrected Christ, but opinions are divided over whether the image is beautiful or inappropriate. Spanish painter Salustiano Garcia, who chose his son as the model, dismissed the criticism as unfounded. On the streets of Seville, opinions are divided.
No me gusta. Y ni me siento representada, ni mucho menos, ni eso representa a Sevilla, ni qué va, es otra cosa.
Nosotros estamos acostumbrados a otro tipo de carteles y nos ha cogido un poquito de sorpresa, pero ni lo veo bien ni lo veo mal. Veo una cosa novedosa y que no estamos acostumbrados y que estamos acostumbrados a otro tipo de carteles en la Semana Santa de Sevilla.
The eye-catching image has drawn lots of attention, going viral on social media upon its release.